Disney, you can chill with all the Frozen propaganda for the moment. We want to resurrect and celebrate Cinderella. So I made a video talking about how I want a sequel to Disney's 2015 live-action adaptation of Cinderella, but I also want a theatrically released sequel to the 1950 animated Cinderella as well, and actually probably want that even more. And I'm not talking about the straight-to-DVD movies. First, I'm going to tell you why, and then I'm going to get into my ideas, so stick around. For many years, Cinderella was universally seen as the epitome of Disney, the definitive classic, the leader of the Disney princesses, and yeah, she's been misunderstood as a character in both the past and present, which I'll get into later, but she was like the image of Disney. Her castle is even part of the Disney logo and the Disney theme parks. However, once this came along and made a bajillion coins, Cindy was overshadowed, forgotten by some, and wrongfully slandered by many. I talked about this in my video of me craving a live-action sequel, but Cinderella is often looked at as a bad role model who is weak, passive, and submissive. But that is not at all true within the context of the actual movie, in which she's been under the abusive control of her wicked stepmother ever since she was a little girl, and she has literally nowhere else to go and doesn't even know what the outside world is like, and is simply doing as she is told and enduring the work and suffering so that she can survive and have a place to live. And she was never waiting around for a prince, she just wanted a night off. And she also didn't just take crap with a smile. She was spunky and she knew when she was being treated unfairly, and she got angry and she talked back and she had a personality, but she knew she also had limits for what she could do or say, or else she could be thrown out on the streets or worse. So I think a new film that really showcases her personality would relieve some of the false stigma, but also just revive and celebrate one of Disney's most iconic, beloved characters, stories, and properties in a big, exciting way. And while Disney branches out with new characters like Elsa, Moana, etc., they could still embrace their roots and allow us to see the classic characters in a new way and let us get to know them more and build into their legacies. And yes, Disney is definitely embracing their roots in other ways because almost everything they produce is based off of a property they own. But characters like Cinderella are major, essential, defining icons and pioneers of the Disney company that are still very much relevant, but also underappreciated and overlooked. And it would be exciting to see them honored in new stories and new circumstances with new adventures, because for how iconic and lucrative a character like Cinderella is, we haven't really seen much of her and really gotten to know her in film. The original 1950 Cinderella movie is so beautiful and artful in its almost impressionistic nature, and it is perfect in its simplicity, but that's what it is, simple. So why not give this universally known character a film with more complexity, depth, etc., etc.? I know there were already 2 straight-to-DVD sequels, but we should all know by now that the straight-to-DVD sequels were lazy, cheap attempts to cash in on the iconic characters without any actual care, and the quality of those movies were terrible, especially when compared to the masterful originals, and they're not canon. But I will say Cinderella 3 is the best of the bunch and has an actually interesting story and takes the characters to intriguing new places. But alas, the limitations of straight-to-DVD-ness prevents it from being anything special. I think what was incredibly exciting was when we saw animated Cinderella on the big screen for the first time since the original in Wreck-It Ralph 2, Ralph Breaks the Internet, in which she appeared with the other Disney princesses for the first time in a CGI animation incarnation. And it was the highlight of the movie for everyone, and they really need to give us a Disney Princess movie or Disney Plus series, but that's a conversation for another day. This leads me to what I want this ideal Cinderella big screen sequel to look like. Don't murder me, but I think it should be 3D CG animated in the vein of Frozen, Tangled, Moana, etc. Listen, I usually prefer 2D animated Disney movies because they just have a magical, entrancing, charming, artistic quality that more modern 3D animated movies lack. And I really, really want Disney to go back to doing 2D animated movies, preferably in the animation style of Sleeping Beauty. But specifically for a new Cinderella movie, I think we should be seeing her in a new, fresh light, in a modern cinematic way, in the biggest, most celebratory fashion, and not give people reason to deem her that old Disney princess with the outdated animation. P.S. I don't at all think the animation of the original Cinderella is outdated, and think its simple beauty far exceeds the more detailed, textured animation of today. We saw how 3D animation and contemporary sensibilities brought a refreshing layer to Cinderella in Ralph Breaks the Internet, and I want more of that, but even bigger. I don't think the design of Cinderella in Ralph Breaks the Internet was the best. She came across a little goofy with her big ears and exaggerated features, so I'd like to see a more toned-down version. And since Lily James helped build upon the Cinderella legacy in the live-action film, it'd be cool if some of the elements of that version were incorporated into the character. I already see that in some of the merchandising and books featuring the animated Cinderella that they've been inspired by the Lily James version, from the wardrobe to how the mother is depicted. I'd love if they incorporated the butterflies from the live-action version into some of her wardrobe. And though I'd love if Jennifer Hale, who has been voicing Cinderella since the incomparable Eileen Woods passed, maybe it'd be interesting if Lily James also voiced the animated Cinderella. But someone who can get as close as possible to the warmth, grace, and charm of Eileen Woods' voice would be preferred. So, what would this movie look like other than being a CG animated expansion of Disney's Cinderella legacy? I want it big, I want it epic, I want sophisticated, I want sort of something like what the Frozen 2 teaser trailer promised but didn't really deliver. I want the spirit of classic Disney and undeniable magic and fantasy in a film that takes universally recognizable iconography and allows it to mature, to grow with its audience. Not PG-13 rated or anything, but something dramatic that is intriguing to adults just as much as it is to kids. It needs to have a good story. If it was influenced by Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, I'd be down for that, but it'd have to be a story that justifies bringing Cinderella back to the big screen in such a grand manner. Something that doesn't feel forced or lazy, and something that really brings things to the next level. I love the idea of Lady Tremaine getting a hold of Fairy Godmother's wand, and she doesn't have to even do what she did in Twist in Time. She can do something else wicked that puts Cinderella in danger, but also like A Twist in Time, I want to see Cinderella get down and dirty and not like you're thinking, perverts. Muddy in a ripped dress, like riding a horse through the night. I'd add a rainstorm in there. I just want to see this character be her full badass self, because we saw glimpses of her, especially when she tried to claw her way out of the attic. I would settle for a Disney Plus series, but I want to see a movie in theaters. So the moral of the story is that we should get a new theatrically released animated Cinderella sequel that encompasses, celebrates, and builds upon the groundbreaking legacy of the property in the biggest way possible. Because Disney utilizing their classic characters that we never get to see in a movie or show in their animated form, instead of doing another Frozen movie or short, is far more exciting and less stale, and keeps Disney's earlier titles and characters just as relevant as ever, but allows them to grow.